Okay. This is John Doyle talking about there's a HBO Max original movie coming out that's like a road trip drama slash comedy, sort of a dramedy about a woman who's like 17 who wants to get her pregnancy terminated, and she needs to drive to another state to do so, to a state where she can get one without parental consent because her parents aren't going to consent. So she has like someone who used to be her friend who has a car drive her. That's what this is. And now John Doyle is super mad about it because he thinks that abortion is murder, even though it's not. So let's talk about this and see if we can sort of rebut his opinions on abortion or whatever. We'll watch the Elliot Hulse video after this.
Fine, you're fine. You always use a condom, so you're fine.
I'm not going to watch this whole trailer. You just need to know that it's like, it's a trailer, it's a road trip comedy, drama. And she's like, I need to get to whatever state. And they're in it, and they do it.
It's very difficult to present me with circumstances which I would believe justify the killing of innocent life, but the trailer for this movie actually came out a few days ago, and when I first saw it, I was very surprised, but at the same time, I was not surprised at all, because, you know, you watch it, and you think, wow, I can't believe that they would present a teenage mother getting an abortion without telling her parents as just a fun road trip comedy. That's disgusting, that's depraved, but then...
Not really. I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting an abortion, John. I know you have moral compunctions with it, and that's fine. No one can force you to get an abortion, John. If you get pregnant someday, and you want to carry it to term, that's fine. That's completely your right to do so. But that doesn't make it disgusting just because you don't agree with it.
Then you look outside, and you remember that we're going to hell in a handcart, so in a way, it makes perfect sense. But speaking of things that make perfect sense, why do you think that the left champions abortion so much?
Because we care about the right of the individual, even though the people on the right are the ones who say, like, we care about individual rights. You don't really seem to, like, at all. The only rights you seem to care about are the right of businesses to screw over consumers, the rights of landlords to screw over tenants, the rights of the government to screw over the people who live in the country. Those seem to be the things you care about, whereas the people on the left, whether we're talking about leftists like myself or if we're even talking about liberals, tend to champion causes that work towards liberty for people and their ability to go about their lives in ways that allow them to live them in a way that makes them happy. Seems like something you guys don't like. The only thing you guys like is, like, guns. That's about it. Table Manor 16, thank you for following. Welcome to the stream.
Why do you think that they celebrate it so much? Why are there parades for? Why do they dedicate...
Because there are still people like you who are trying to strip away the right to have an abortion away from people all the time. It's a thing that's constantly being fought about.
Ceremonies and clothing to it. Why do they even evangelically praise it and remind you of the abortions that they've had, trying to convince you and perhaps even themselves that it was okay and that it was the right thing to do? Well,
because for many people who choose to do so, for most people who choose to do so, it is the right thing to do for them. Pretty simple.
The reason is that abortion is the crown jewel of their religion. It is the ultimate...
That's true, actually. Every Sunday, I go to my, I guess it's the Church of Leftism or whatever, and instead of communion wafers, we put little thin sliced aborted fetus on a cracker, and we take that as a sacrament. Very true, John.
State of liberal philosophy. It is the logical conclusion of liberal philosophy. It means that they are so liberated and so autonomous that they can literally murder another human being if it's...
Not a human being, John. This has been explained multiple times, but let me go on about it in case you haven't heard this argument before, so you can use it when some idiot like John comes up and tries to tell you that your right to have an abortion is not something that's okay. If someone around you has an organ that fails, let's say they have a very rare blood type, and only you can give them a kidney in order to save their life. Only you. You have some rare thing where you and that person are the only people on the planet who share this blood type. You cannot be forced by anyone, by that individual, by the government, by a church, by your family, by your friends, to give that organ if you don't want to. No one can have their bodily autonomy taken away from them in order to save the life of another. So first of all, I don't think fetuses are the same thing as a human being. Morally, I don't think so. It's like saying a seed is exactly the same thing as a tree just because if you leave it be, eventually it might become a tree. I disagree entirely. Secondly, even if you decide that you think fetuses are human beings, you cannot force another human being to sustain that life. You just can't do it. That's not how the law works.
Life is inconvenient to them. It means that they get to play God. And perhaps you don't believe that abortion is murder, so we'll get to that a little bit later, but
please do.
If you think about what differentiates the left from the right, it can most simply be articulated as the belief in hierarchy versus the belief in total equality. And a lot of people have this take of, well, the left and right paradigm is false. It's not real. Both sides are the same. Kind of cringe, also just not true. Like, politicians lying doesn't invalidate the historical and philosophical nature of the right and the left. And that categorization dates back to the aftermath of the French Revolution, where those who believed in total equality sat on the left and those who believed in hierarchy sat on the right. And so liberalism's belief in total equality, the idea that we're all born the same, has led to the...
Boy, what crazy radical left-leaning idea is that? All men are created equal.
belief that man ought to be liberated.
Endowed by their creator with unalienable rights. Is that also a thing, John? You think about that? Maybe? No? Okay, cool.
Even from the constraints and unfairness of nature. That nature which produces hierarchy, also known as inequality, as well as human life. So to be truly liberated means to even be liberated from nature, which means that the...
DM Trey with 5 bits. I know a guy who tried telling me that people get abortions so they don't need birth control. Winter O'Hare with 50 bits. God, I hate anti-choice people. They don't care about babies when they're born. They only care about telling people what they can and can't do. True. John. I gotta go back and listen to what he just said. I lost my train of thought.
As well as human life. So, nature. That nature which produces...
Going against nature. John, there are plenty of things that we do that go against nature. Human beings are unique amongst animals in that we have reasoning capabilities. We not only have self-awareness, but we have not only sentience, but sapience, right? We believe that we have certain rights. We endow these rights upon each other. Because at the end of the day, that's all a right is. It's an agreement between all of us that no one can take this particular right away from you. And a lot of those rights don't necessarily jive with nature. Your right to pursue happiness, your right to independence, these things aren't necessarily congruent with nature. You could argue that the natural state of man is some state in which the strong rule over the weak, in which the strong force the weak to do their bidding, whether it be through forced marriages, like I'm Grog, I have a rock, I'm gonna hit this woman on the head, drag her back to my cave, have my way with her, and, you know, have a family. Or human beings enslaving other human beings, which unfortunately has been the case in many human societies throughout time. That doesn't make those things good just because they might be natural, whatever that means. And also, if we're talking about what's natural, pregnancies end without coming to term all the time. So come on. Unconditional Prong 1, thank you for following.
Hierarchy, also known as inequality, as well as human life. So to be truly liberated means to even be liberated from nature, which means that the state must enforce equality, since if left alone, inequality will result, and also to be liberated from the natural...
I think people want equality of opportunity, which is a good thing.
...consequence of sex, which is pregnancy. And so...
Not if you take birth control or if you get an abortion. And that's the point. John, we invent medical procedures that help people that would otherwise die all the time. People with diabetes, prior to the invention of insulin, would eventually slip into diabetic comas and die. That's natural. That doesn't make it good. Natural is not a synonym for the moral good. Oh, hold on, I'll get this person. Banned. Thank you, Bellstar, for getting that. Is he against condoms as well? Is he Catholic? I don't remember if John Doyle's Catholic.
So, as we can see, the results of this have been things like abortion and state-enforced equality of outcome. So it's all connected, and that's why abortion is so important to them. The most fundamental characteristic of a human being and of nature in general, the ability to reproduce, has been conquered by liberalism through...
John, no one's forcing abortions on people who don't want them. Do you not understand that that's the entire point of the pro-choice position? That if you want an abortion for this particular pregnancy, then you should have one if that's what you want. And if you want to carry a baby to full term and have it, that's great too. That's the choice in pro-choice. Although if we can conquer concepts as broad as human reproduction, dibs. A Colston with 20 bits. In the book, you find that her boyfriend poked a hole in her condom to get her pregnant. John's essentially condoning RAPE in the book. Oh, in the book that the movie's based on. I gotcha. Interesting.
Abstract rationalizations. There will never be a greater accomplishment for liberalism since nothing takes precedence over the value of human life.
John, again, you're putting, like, motivations on people on the left that are just inaccurate. When I think about, like, being pro-choice, and I think about people having the right to choose if they want to carry pregnancies to term or not, I'm not thinking, we have conquered the highest value of all, the value of human life. I'm thinking, oh, great, that person has a choice as to what to do with their body. That's awesome. And since upwards of 95 or something % of pregnancy terminations happen in the first 5 weeks, that thing is not human to me. It just isn't. I do not consider a fetus. I do not consider, like, a zygote a human being. I don't. And most people I know on the left also don't. It's just a moral difference, John. And you can have your opinion if you think that is a human being. I don't really care. That's your position. That's fine. That's between you and whoever you get pregnant in the future if that happens. Like, that's you guys' deal. Great. But you cannot enforce that view on others, because as much as you might want to say, oh, this is a black and white issue, it's not. It just isn't. It isn't. It's not. There's no scientific, like, conclusion you can draw to decide when does something become a human being. That answer doesn't exist. That's a philosophical question. And if you answer that philosophically in such a way that you think that it starts at conception, great. That's your business. I don't care. I'm not going to try and tell you differently for your own life. However, you decide to think, hey, I've come up with this philosophical answer, and everyone needs to apply it to themselves because it's my opinion, and my opinion is correct. And that's ridiculous. John, you can have your feelings on when life begins, and if you think that someone should be forced to carry that life, which is an entirely different discussion. But at the end of the day, other people don't agree with you. And it's their right to carry out their beliefs the way that they see fit.
Unless they can manage to, like, scientifically clone people or to actualize asexual reproduction, but only then will something even begin to rival the magnitude of abortion as the quintessential accomplishment of liberalism.
I think that the quintessential accomplishment of liberalism is, like, democracy, the right to vote, the civil rights movement, women's suffrage, those things. The right to abortion is great. The right to privacy, which is what it was found under Roe v. Wade, basically. They said that in the decision that certain rights casted a penumbra, and abortion fell under the right to privacy, which is an interesting decision. These things are good. I don't think we should be trying to put them in, like, categorically what's the best. They're all good things, and yes, abortion has existed long before liberalism. John, the thing you need to understand is that the conversation about abortion has never been, should we allow abortions or should we have zero abortions? Because there's never been a period in human history when we've had zero abortions. In the United States prior to Roe v. Wade, do you know what happened when abortion was illegal? People would go to backroom abortion clinics with people who were unqualified to be doing that job. And it would hurt the mother. It would hurt the woman getting the abortion. Sometimes it would kill them because it wasn't done under proper medical supervision. that's a problem. So we're not having a discussion about should we have abortion or should we have no abortion. We're having a discussion about should we have safe abortion or should we have backroom abortions that are going to kill tons of people. Completely different.
The complete disregard of the other, over whom one has a host of moral and perhaps even biological obligations in pursuit of the divine self. It's
in pursuit of the divine self. John, I hate to break it to you, but first of all, you can't bring religion into this. For your own personal considerations, you can. But if we're talking about the law, you cannot bring religion into the law, period. Secondly, if we're going to talk about Christianity, which is the religion that you follow, John, how many times is abortion mentioned in the Bible? I'll give you all a second in the chat in case you don't know this. How many times do you all think abortion is mentioned in the Bible? Take a guess. I'm just curious what the chat thinks. Some of you will know because we've covered this on the Atheist Bible Study, but a lot of people are saying 1, 1, 1, 1. You're all right. Abortion is mentioned once in the Old Testament, and its instructions on how to perform an abortion. The one time abortion is mentioned in the Bible, it doesn't say something like, oh, abortion is wicked and those who perform it are going to hell. Satan is... No. It's like, hey, you think your wife's cheating on you? Then you need to go to the priest, and he's going to do these things, and it'll cause her to miscarry. That's in the Bible. Let's find the exact passage, shall we? Abortion instructions in the Bible. Ordeal of the bitter water. The ordeal of the bitter water was a trial by ordeal administered to the wife of whose husband suspected her of adultery, but who had no witnesses to make a formal case. Numbers 5:11 through 31. The ordeal is further explained in the Talmud in the 7th tractate of Nashim. Sota is a woman suspected of adultery who undergoes the ordeal of bitter water, or ordeal of jealousy as described and prescribed in the priestly code. In the book of Numbers, the 4th book of the Hebrew Bible, the term sota itself is not found in the Hebrew Bible, but is Mishnak, Hebrew based on the verse of, if she had strayed. And the priest shall cause her to swear, and shall say unto the woman, if no man hath lain with thee, and if thou hast not gone aside to uncleanliness, being under thy husband, be thou free from this water of bitterness that causes the curse. But if thou hast gone aside, being under thy husband, and if thou be defiled, and some man have lain with thee besides thy husband, then the priest shall cause the woman to swear with a certain oath cursing, and the priest shall say unto the woman, the Lord make thee a curse and an oath among thy people, when the Lord doth make thy thigh fall away and thy belly to swell. Pregnancy. And this water that causeth the curse shall go into thy bowels, and make thy belly to swell and thy thighs to fall away. And the woman shall say, Amen, Amen. And the priest shall write these curses on a scroll, and shall blot them out into the water of bitterness. And he shall make the woman drink the water of bitterness that causeth the curse, and the water that causeth the curse shall enter in her and become bitter. So the idea is that you think your wife cheated on you, you take her to the priest knows this concoction that they call the bitter water. I don't know what this is. It's some kind of folk medicine, I would imagine, that they ascribe supernatural beliefs to. And they basically say, drink this, and if you miscarry because of this thing that we're giving you, which is an abortion according to people on the right. Excuse me. Then that means that you cheated on your husband. If you don't miscarry, it means you didn't cheat. Of course, this is stupid logic. It's like witch hunt logic. Like, oh, if we dunk her in the water and she dies, she was innocent. But if she lives, she's a witch and we need to kill her. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Anyway, so the Bible mentions abortion once, and it promotes it in the case of cheating on your husband. So the Bible is not anti-abortion by any means.
It's abhorrent. But anyways, we'll watch the trailer, we'll go over that, and then we'll talk about why this movie is so terrible and harmful, and also why abortion in general is so terrible and harmful, along with what all of this means for our country. But before we get into that, I do have to tell you very quickly about a service I've been using for the last few months called ExpressVPN. For those of you unfamiliar,
I can't believe he's getting sponsored by ExpressVPN. Thank you to Antipodian Squid with 100 bits. I once pointed this out to someone who was using the Bible as a reason to oppose the Bible, and their response was, "That's not an abortion, it's a trial." And what happens if you fail the trial? It aborts the baby. It's literally a trial by abortion.
Pretty epic. It's a top for some reason. Any of your ExpressVPN.com. Let's go through the trailer.
Fine, you're fine. You always use a condom, so you're fine.
Hey, dude.
I've got this thing.
If a young woman needs a procedure, is that possible? Where's the closest facility? There's an Albuquerque in Missouri? The law won't let me get one without my parents knowing.
Some important context for this movie, by the way, is that the reason she needs to get this abortion, the reason that she needs to kill this child, is because according to the descriptions of the film, having this child would squander her Ivy League college dreams.
Yes, and that's perfectly fine. If a tree drops a seed next to my driveway, and it's gonna, I know, if it grows, is about to destroy my driveway, I have every right to take a shovel and pull the seed out of the ground before it turns into a tree and destroys my driveway. Same thing.
And this is not unlike when we saw Michelle Williams praise abortion at the Golden Globes and say that if it weren't for her abortion, she never would have been able to receive that award. Perhaps this is operating on a different scale, but the premise remains the same, which is that the life of a human being is second to my desires. That not.
Yep, that happens all the time, John. Hate to break it to you. And again, you're considering something that isn't a human yet, a human life, when it isn't.
Not only is it permissible, but it's actually good to sacrifice human life at the altar of fame, fortune, or status. It's evil. More specifically, it's satanic, but I'm sure we'll get into that later.
It's satanic? Oh, John, don't get into the QAnon bullshit. That'll be a quick way to get your channel banned. Although, if you'd like to do that, please do so, and we can get you kicked off YouTube very quickly.
I'd be surprised if we could avoid it. Might have to go preacher mode. We'll see. But this whole leftist narrative of, oh, well, motherhood, serving your family, that's not empowering for women. You know what is empowering for women? Serving an employer.
Both can be, John. What's empowering is people having the agency to decide what they want to do with their own life.
Not getting married and having kids, but working 50 hours a week, entering numbers into a spreadsheet, or writing legal briefs. That's what it really means to be a woman.
If that's what the woman who you're talking about wants to do with her life, that's the entire point. The point is not to prescribe to someone because of their gender what they should do with their life. If someone wants to be a stay-at-home mom, great, good for them. If someone wants to be a stay-at-home dad, great, good for them. If someone wants to go and work at a law firm, awesome, they should go for it. That's the entire point of personal liberty, John. Something that people on the right seem to have completely forgotten, or at the very least, you never really believed in it, and you've been using it as a dog whistle for decades because you just think, oh, you know, personal liberty, it sounds great. Well, John, personal liberty means that you can pursue happiness in whatever way makes you happy. Pretty simple.
And as it would turn out, as we've experienced a few decades of
Winter O'Hare with 50 bits. At the same time, John would reject the notion of providing aid for single mothers. I hate him. Yeah, he's awful. He's a hypocrite. He doesn't care about children. He doesn't care about babies. He cares about forcing women into a role that he thinks is right for them, that being motherhood, even when they don't want to. It's ridiculous.
that supposed female empowerment, women are experiencing record levels of depression.
I think men are too. We're all very depressed. John, we live in a society where, like, there are people out there who have, like, $200 billion. Jeff Bezos, I think, just reached $200 billion. Meanwhile, there are people who can't feed their kids. There are people who can't feed themselves or keep a roof over their head. People are working shitty minimum wage jobs, sometimes multiple of them, just to sustain themselves and their families. There's no upward mobility for so many people in our society. And we look at the future and see nothing but doom. We see politicians not caring about our interests, not caring about the concerns of climate change, which again, I know you don't think are real, but you're wrong. So I'm going to continue anyway, because I'm not going to act like your opinion matters more than a fucking scientist. John, the reason people are depressed is not because of the non-conformity towards gender roles. If that's your claim, you need to substantiate that.
They are more depressed than men. They're becoming more depressed relative to men.
I think women's depression has always been somewhat higher than men. So it's gone down, but so is men's, but women already starting lower. They both dropped, but women's are, again, we're already lower, so.
And they're more depressed than their mothers and their grandmothers at the same stages of their lives. This is referred to as the
I imagine the same thing happened with men. I'd imagine, John, you're probably more depressed than your dad or his dad, probably because they had more opportunity and better paying jobs than you do. Like, John, you either work or worked at Subway. You lucked out and were able to do this internet thing. Imagine if you were stuck at that Subway job your entire life because, John, you don't believe in higher education in the first place. And as far as I know, you weren't interested in any trade school, but I could be wrong. So if you had to work at that Subway for the rest of your life for minimum wage, do you think that you would be depressed? Probably.
paradox of declining female happiness. And so for Hollywood to come in and communicate to young girls, hey, it's totally normal for you to be sexually active in high school. Pff, saving yourself for marriage, that's outdated. People back then weren't as smart.
John, it's not about prescribing something to people. It's about the fact that people have sex. People in high school have sex. Like, they just do. The movie's not telling you to go do it. It's telling you, hey, here's a story about someone who did have sex with their boyfriend and they got pregnant and now they gotta deal with it because they don't want to carry the pregnancy to term. And that's fine. What do you not understand? That representation of something is not automatically saying, hey, you should go do this thing. People in high school have sex, John. I don't think you did, but other people do. You know what I mean? Like, people with friends and social relationships.
As we are now. I mean, they still thought that only women could give birth, but we're smarter now. And also, if you happen to get pregnant doing that thing that is designed to get you pregnant, just kill the kid. You gotta go be a number at a university.
John, first of all, most sexual encounters, even unprotected ones, do not result in pregnancies. And even those that do, a good portion of those do not carry to term. Like, do you not know this, John? Do you not know that so many pregnancies... In fairness, John probably doesn't know this, because I don't think he's ever talked to a woman who trusts him enough to, like, actually have a heart-to-heart and explain this to him. Because in society, we don't talk about it a ton. So many pregnancies do not carry to term. So many pregnancies just end. That's why, like, if you get pregnant, people don't tell people before the 2-month mark. Because prior to that, there's a good chance that it's not gonna continue. Like, that's a very, very common thing. And I don't know if John knows that. But anyway, Cherry Tree Boy with a bit. I left because the stream was glitching and it was disappointing of seeing John's. It's immeasurable. Magnetar707, thanks for continuing your subscription. 4-month streak. Magnetar says, hello everybody, an update on the fire near my house. It's still really close, but it hasn't moved any closer in like 4 days, and the firefighters are doing great work securing my neighborhood, so I'm doing a lot better. Good, I'm glad. I hope you and your home continue to be safe.
And then you gotta go be a number at some company. Don't settle down, don't have a family. That's not what you want. You want to do what the men do, because the best way to empower...
John, the vast majority of media in America still shows like people having families is a positive thing. Like, people have careers, but there's plenty of media that shows women who are stay-at-home moms. There's plenty of media that still says, hey, this is a thing you can be. It's just that it's not the only thing you can be.
Our women is to rape them of their feminine identity.
Really? That's what you're gonna do, John? Really?
And then tell them that femininity is oppressive and they have to strive to be just like men. And the only people who actually get to proudly embody womanhood are delusional men. That's what our daughters are learning.
There we go.
Them of their feminine identity, and then tell them that femininity is oppressive and they have to strive to be just like men. And the only people who
Report. Report. Hey, anybody want a link to this in the chat for absolutely no reason? We're at 8:08. He's about to say some transphobic shit. There's a link in case you want it for literally any reason at all.
actually get to proudly embody womanhood are delusional men. That's what our daughters are learning. Our daughters are taught that the defining characteristic of their identity as a woman is not their ability to create life, but rather their choice, their rights to kill that life if it's inconvenient.
No one says to women, hey, you know what makes you a woman? Your right to have an abortion.
Convenient to them. It's disgusting. Let's empower women by rejecting the fundamental characteristics of womanhood. That's why the pioneering feminists didn't want women to even have a choice. Simone de Beauvoir told Betty Friedan that if women were allowed to make the choice for themselves, then too many would want to stay home and raise children. And so the only way for them to achieve the goals of their narrative was to indoctrinate generations of women.
So raising women from a young age with nothing but baby dolls and telling them you're going to be a great mom when you grow up, and telling them the only thing you can be as a mom is not indoctrination, but telling them you can be whatever you want. You can go have a career, you can go be in politics, you can go do whatever you want. You can be an entrepreneur, you can have a kid, you can be a stay-at-home mom, or you can have kids and go to work. But that, having the freedom to choose, that's indoctrination. Remember, everyone, freedom is slavery. Big Brother says so.
Into this completely artificial perversion of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a mother. I mean, the movie is literally called Unpregnant. What does that even mean? That's not a real concept. That's a euphemism.
Oh god, what was it originally called? It had a better name, but they couldn't get away with it. It was the something trip. It was like a pun. Hold on, I gotta find it. I know it had a name that I was like trying to... Abort Mission! That's what it was called. And then they had to change the name. I think Abort Mission would have been the better title, but... People are sensitive.
Typically, you'd expect that to mean like, oh, she gave birth to the child. But no, in this case, it would mean that she killed it. And they're not even taking the extreme approach.
Again, you're using the word kill on someone who has been pregnant for probably a couple of weeks. Not a couple of weeks. It takes longer to realize something. Probably within the first 5 weeks, maybe a little bit later. You're using kill in that, like, context. Very loosey-goosey. I would not consider what we have there at that point to be living. At least in the sense that it's a human being. So I disagree.
Right? Like, they're not even taking the, oh, well, you know, the mother's health was... No, they're just saying, well, she wants to go to college, so she should be able to kill it. And
again, you're using the word kill. Don't agree. But again, I explained earlier that even if you do consider it a human being, you can't force another human being into giving up their bodily autonomy for another human being, even if that's what you consider. So you're losing on all fronts, John. Thank you to Stephen J. Neptune Man for 15 bits. I just can't understand why people say John Doyle is a fascist.
And these types of reasons make up the vast majority of reasons for women getting abortions, by the way, which is why you can never compromise with these people.
Okay, and it's none of your business why people get abortions, John. They have the right to do so. And if you ever get it overturned by the court, people aren't going to stop getting abortions. It's just going to move underground, and it's going to hurt a lot of people, and it'll be unfortunate. And once again, we'll have to fight for it, and we'll get the right back yet again. I don't know what you think you're doing here, John. It's a movie about someone getting an abortion because people get abortions. You're allowed to represent things that happen in the real world in movies. You know that, right? Heck, you're allowed to show things that don't happen in real life in movies. That's kind of the point of like 90% of movies.
On anything, because they will never stop. And I also like how this is where we're at now with teenage movies. Like, this is what the coming of age stories are now, and they're only going to get—
Yes, John, all coming of age movies moving forward will have to include an abortion. It's a quota. George Soros sent the message out to every movie studio. If you ever make a coming of age story, it must now include an abortion. John, how about the movie Juno? Juno's another movie. It's quite good. That's a kind of a coming-of-age comedy drama with a similar tone to this movie, but it involves someone who doesn't want to terminate the pregnancy and instead carries it to term. That's fine, right? So why isn't this fine? There's already been the teen comedy about someone who's pregnant and actually has the baby. Why not have this one? John, people have a First Amendment right to make movies about whatever they want. Or sorry, do you only think the Second Amendment is the amendment that counts? That would make sense.
Get worse from here. And you can trace the evolution like, dude, let's throw—
They hated Juno when it came out too. When did Juno come out? Hold on. 2007. How old was John in 2007? 13. 21 minus 13. Well, John was 8 years old when Juno came out, so I guess he probably didn't have an opinion on it.
party while mom and dad are gone. Dude, let's drink beer. We don't have to tell our parents. Hey, let's sneak out Saturday night so we can go make out in a car with bench seating. And now it's like, hey, I'm pregnant and I want to kill the child. Let's go on a road trip. I also like when she's waiting for the test results, she's telling herself like, oh, I can't be pregnant because I always use a condom, which is really just sad because you've got this girl.
As someone mentioned in the chat earlier, what happens in the movie, or at least what happens in the book version, I don't know if they'll change it in the movie, the boyfriend that she was sleeping with poked holes in the condom, which is assault, if you don't know. So John is literally talking about this like, actually, you can get pregnant. Like, John, maybe watch the movie before you criticize it. That would make sure you don't put your foot in your mouth.
Who's sexually active in high school, and through habitual participation of the act designed to create human life, she manages to create a human life. And because she was irresponsible, because she wasn't ready to be a mother yet, now that life, which she is responsible for creating, has to die. But it's...
Again, you're using the term die. I don't think something that hasn't been born can die. Again, you can disagree with me. That's fine. That's why I'm pro-choice. I'm not pro-forced abortion. John, if you get pregnant, somehow miraculously, and you would like to carry that baby to term and teach it as your own, you can name it little baby Adolf, and you can do whatever you want and just raise that baby, and that's great. But you can't force that on other people. That's the entire point of the pro-choice position, is to give people the right to choose whether or not they want to carry out that pregnancy or not.
It's okay because she's going to go get a degree, probably in something useless. And, you know, she got to secrete some dopamine and oxytocin along the way. Was it worth it, mommy?
This is the comic when that actress talked about abortion at the Golden Globes, and someone made this, and I found it hilarious. Someone should write a rebuttal comic where she's like, fuck yeah. Maybe if I won an Oscar, it'd be a little better. But yeah, it's a Golden Globe. It's something to put on the mantle, you know? And the funny thing is, too, like, she has kids. This woman has kids now. It's not like she never had kids, if that's your concern. Like, yeah, she had an abortion. First of all, it wouldn't look like this. This isn't what fetuses look like. This is what a 3-year-old kid looks like. Oh man, you know what I want John to learn someday, that his parents that got pregnant prior to him, and that they terminated a pregnancy, and then later they had him, making John's existence contingent on an abortion, just to see his head explode with how he feels about that. That'd be hilarious.
I know we're not close anymore.
True.
And I'm the last person that you want to help.
Accurate.
But I need your help, and I don't have anywhere else to go.
Go where?
To get the thing, the procedure.
So you're hiding this from your man, your best friend,
Hey, girl.
and your Jesus freak parents, and you thought, why not ask Bailey Butler to drive me hundreds of miles? Because she probably doesn't have anything to do anyway.
Kind of, yes. Bailey! Bailey, come on!
I'm just messing with you. You're right, I do not have anything going on.
I thought you drove a Camry.
Road trip! Abortion is much less of a traumatic event, much more of a road trip.
I mean, it would probably depend upon the person in the situation. I'm sure there are some people who have a really hard time and find their abortion to be a difficult thing. But there are other people who have it done and they're just like, yeah, this is something I needed to do and I'm glad I had the right to do it. And that's fine. People have the choice, John, and all choices come with them feelings about that choice. Most people are perfectly fine with their abortions. Most people are glad they made that decision. Are there some people out there who disagree? Maybe. But again, it doesn't change the fact that you're an adult person, and it's your choice, right? We all have choices that we make on a daily basis.
Teen pregnancy is quirky. Killing babies is quirky.
It's not killing babies, John. It's not a baby.
This is definitely not a cope. It's not like when people celebrate their abortions, they have to assure us that they don't regret it, that it was the best decision that...
John, they're saying this literally to people like you, who are saying like, you're gonna regret that abortion. No, most women don't regret abortions they have. They just don't. And they're trying to reinforce that because people like you constantly are like, you're gonna regret that abortion. No, most people don't. They really don't.
That they ever made? Yeah, okay. Which one of us are you trying to convince, me or you? Celebrating abortion is a cope. Women are much more likely to
Not really?
develop anxiety disorders, depression, substance abuse problems, or to commit suicide after they've had an abortion. And the left's answer...
I would imagine that's correlative and not causative. I would imagine... Oh boy, how am I going to put this? I think that people who are going to tend to have abortions are probably going to have worse outcomes overall, because I think people are going to have more unexpected pregnancies in instances where they weren't using birth control, and if you're not using birth control, you probably haven't been educated either on sex or don't have a very good education system in general, and those things are going to correlate to worse life outcomes, which is going to lead to more depression and also lead to higher instances of abortion. That doesn't mean that having the abortion is literally what causes them to have issues. You also didn't cite this source, as always, John. So, start citing your sources, and then we can talk about them.
to this is because everything ever has been socially constructed. It's because people like you make them feel bad about it, which again is a cope. And also,
no, it's because you're an asshole who makes people feel bad about things, John. You were literally making fun of trans people like 2 minutes ago.
like how this is the problem in the film. The central conflict is not that the girl is pregnant. It's not that she's inheriting this responsibility. The problem is, oh, I'm definitely going to kill it. It's just going to be kind of tricky because I can't let my parents find out about it.
Yeah, because she has that right, John, whether you want her to or not. This is the cope. This is you making a 20-minute video where you're like, "Ree, they made a movie about a woman getting an abortion." Like, yeah, she can do that. That's her right. Cope harder, John.
Because, you know, they would stop me, and that's inconvenient to what I want, which of course just reinforces the eternal antagonist as the parents and their Christian moral code. Remember, the girl referred to the parents as a Jesus freak.
Yeah, they had a picture of the Pope, like, on their wall. That's some, like, top-tier weirdo stuff.
Parents. Using Jesus freak or anything adjacent as a pejorative is the biggest rhetorical cope in the history of the English language. What is it?
Wow. That sure is a claim.
mean to be a Jesus freak. Like, bro, you're so pious. Haha, bro, I bet the only thing you kneel for is Christ and not literally any minority who asks you to. What an idiot, bro. I bet.
John, people make fun of people who are Jesus freaks because they're weirdos who believe all sorts of crazy things. No one looks at a really, really Christian person and thinks, wow, they're so pious, unless you're also a religious person. I don't think people who are super religious are moral. They often use their religion to promote immorality, to promote disenfranchisement of people who are different from them. Gay people, lesbians, trans people, people who want to get abortions. These things are immoral, at least from my perspective. I've never looked at someone who's super duper religious and been like, dang, bro, so pious.
Bet you keep a pure mind and don't even watch cartoon animals have sex. What a
Haven't you, John, though? Because let me tell you, pretty great.
loser. It's such a cope. And I'm not saying all atheists are like that, but the people who are like that, these very disgusting, hedonistic, degenerate people, the people who would use Jesus freak as an insult, they're all atheists. And we can talk about the difference between policies all day long, but really what it comes down to is the original and eternal conflict between good and evil. This is not Republicans versus Democrats or conservatives versus liberals. This is good versus evil. And
Good versus evil. Which side do you think you're on again, John? Just curious.
we'll get more in depth with that in a second, but that's the most important thing to be thinking about when looking at things like this, because it, you look outside the state of the country, the state of the world. Once you accept that, everything else just makes sense. And of course, I would never go as far as to say something like the movie is satanic. However, if Satanists were producing content, this is about exactly what it would look like. Not, hey.
John, if Satanists were making content, it would probably look more like the 1980s movie Heavy Metal. Or like, oh god, what's a good example of a really metal movie? I don't know, maybe Tenacious D if it were like a comedy, or I don't know. I don't think it'd be this like twee HBO Max road trip movie.
Hey girl, I need your help raising this child or with completing the pregnancy and putting it up for adoption, which would be so easy since there are huge waiting lists for newborn babies at any given time. No, we're actually just gonna go kill it, and I'm not gonna tell my parents because I don't need them reminding me that what I'm doing is selfish and...
Okay, or they don't need the vacuous moralizing of saying, but 2,000-year-old book says, even though it doesn't say that. It's pointless, John. People don't need your religious input because it's less than worthless.
And wrong, yes.
Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico. We'll be in Albuquerque by tomorrow night. No. And we'll be home Sunday evening. I'm setting the alarm for 5 a.m.
Self-care, huh?
I had to post something so people wouldn't bother me.
Of course, it's so people wouldn't know you're with me.
Have a heart,
And we both know you wouldn't do the same for me.
You made it really hard to be your friend.
I'm sorry that I couldn't be perfect for you all the time.
Needed you to be perfect.
I appreciate everything you've done for me.
You crazy idiot! That is so goddamn nice. Let's go!
cut 'em in the bathroom.
Now we've got this arc, which is just incredible, and it's that the film is going to emphasize more on the relationship between these two girls.
Yes, because that's part of the movie. It's about this bonding experience they're having as two women who are going through an experience that, like, most people won't go through, and being like, hey, I need your help getting an abortion because my parents won't let me. I trust you enough to have you in on this, to come and help me do this. And it seems, again, I haven't read the book or seen the movie or anything, but it seems like they used to be friends, but at some point in their schooling, like, one of them went on to be like the, oh, I'm a popular type A person, and the other one's more like, just like, whatever, not that. Not in the popular crowd, and through this experience, they'll grow closer together. It seems like John's mad that, like, the fetus isn't a main character when it's a plot device. Sorry, John, but it's not a character in the movie because it's not a person.
Then on the relationship between the mother and her child, they're going to
It's not a child. It's literally like a lump of cells at this point, John.
make this relationship appear to be more significant and more emotional than the relationship between the mother and her child. And the reason for that is that they don't want to acknowledge a relationship.
Because to them it doesn't exist. John, if you got pregnant, or if you had a girlfriend or a wife and they got pregnant, and you felt there was a relationship between you and the fetus, that's great. That's on you. But that's something you're projecting onto it, right? It's not sentient. It's not self-aware. It doesn't know anything. It doesn't feel anything, at least up until a certain point in the pregnancy. It's just kind of there, right? And if you feel there's this connection between you and the fetus, I'm happy for you and that's awesome, but it's something that you're feeling. It's not a tangible thing that exists, right? So for someone who doesn't feel that, it doesn't exist. Because that relationship is entirely contingent upon you feeling it. That's what the relationship is. So if someone doesn't have this connection to the fetus or zygote growing inside of them, that's completely fine. Because it doesn't matter. It's a fetus. It doesn't give a fuck.
It doesn't exist. It's not a child. It's not even a life.
It's certainly not a child, that's for sure. Thank you to Freaking Out 99 for a bit. Having a relationship with the fetus is like drawing a face on an egg and pretending it's alive until it hatches, like in Ice Age 3. Fair enough.
It's just a clump of cells. The real
Yes, it is. That's what it is, John.
focus here is on the fact that the one girl hasn't always been so nice to the other girl, but now they're uniting together to kill a kid because girl power. In abortions,
Girl power. If we could have more girl power movies that are like about abortions, I'm on board. Or straight up like killing kids. Let's get a movie where a bunch of Satanists mow down an entire kindergarten. That'll go well. Actually, it wouldn't, because those are actual children, and people care about children. Stephen J. Neptune Man with 15 bits. For someone who treasures the value of life so much, you would think he would support Black Lives Matter movement instead of demolishing it. Yeah, that's the point. He's like, it's a bad faith argument. He doesn't care about life. He cares about people fitting into certain roles. He doesn't care about the fact that he thinks this, like, lump of cells is a person. I don't even think he necessarily actually believes that. I think he thinks if he can force people to have children and not have abortions, then he can force women more often than they are now into a certain societal role. And this is his, like, tertiary way of trying to get that to happen. He's trying to force women into a traditional gender role, but he can't just say that. So instead of just saying, like, I want to force women to be mothers, he's going to say, well, if you get pregnant, you gotta have it, because that pushes more people into that role de facto. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous bad faith argumentation.
actually a very simple issue. Like, it gets overcomplicated because both sides have very vested interests in the outcomes, and so we get into these complex philosophical and bioethical discussions, but then we also get into these less intelligent, no uterus, no opinion type discussions. But when you clear all the smoke away, it just boils down to, if that is a human life, then you can't kill it. And the problem with that is that
no, you haven't demonstrated it's a human life, John. That's a philosophical question. If you have a definitive answer to literally any philosophical question, then please write a paper about it. That would be amazing. But you haven't demonstrated that, so that's not the conversation we're having.
that it's fairly easy to prove that what occupies these wombs are human beings and that they are.
No, it's not. No person who is against abortion has ever successfully demonstrated that. If you think you can right now, go for it, and I'll change my mind. But since no one ever has, I doubt Subway employee John Doyle has the key. Big Booty Goth Queer with a bit. Did you see my candy for later? My phone is laggy, so I wasn't sure. I did not see the candy.
Are alive. And so that presupposes that human life has value, which is actually not...
You're presupposing it's a human life, which not everyone agrees with. That's not a solved matter, and there is no solution.
Something that the right and left agree upon anymore, which is why from there the left will get into arguments like, well, it's not enough to be a human being, it has to have personhood as defined by whichever...
I don't think it's even a human being, but sure, if you want to move the goalposts there, then yeah, it has to have personhood, I guess, if that's where you're doing it. That would still be a philosophical conversation, just like human being, regardless of what you call it or where you move that goalpost. And again, even if you were to meet, like, it's a human being. You can't force a human being to sustain the life of another human being against their will. You just can't. It's not how things work. You can't literally, like, let's imagine if what John said was true, and if we applied this logic to everything in life. Imagine if one day, this is how the law works. Someone gets in a car accident, and they have a similar blood type to you. The police knock on your door and arrest you because you have the same blood type, and they literally force you to have an operation to have an organ removed and forcibly donated to someone else. Is that right? Is it right for your bodily autonomy to be stripped away from you just because it saves the life of someone else? Or, as Americans, as human beings, do we value the fact that you have the right to decide what happens with your own body? That you cannot have something taken away from you for the benefit of someone else. You can't do that. Antipodian Squid with 100 bits. He's also presupposing that fetal life has higher value than the adult human carrying it. Oh yeah, and you know why? Because the fetus, whatever you want to call it, might be a boy. And John values the life of men higher than women. Protesters assembled outside of Jeff Bezos' DC home with a guillotine. Yeah, I've seen it. Either bring a real guillotine or I don't care. I'm sick of these, like, oh, look, we did a little, haha, we got a fake guillotine. Do you get it, Jeff? Haha, we got ya. Meanwhile, he's in there counting his $200 billion net worth. He's like, yeah, uh-huh. Call me when the real guillotine shows up. Thanks.
Arbitrary metric is most convenient at the time, be it sentience, viability, etc. Or, well, that doesn't matter because we have bodily autonomy, which means that we can do what we want regardless. My body, my choice. And so
yes, John, that's how that works. Do you disagree? Do you want people showing up at your door, stealing your organs because they could help someone else?
So again, the conflict is much less right versus left, pro-life versus pro-choice. It really just comes down to whether you believe that human life has unique value.
No, it doesn't. Not at all. I think human life has value. I really, really do. But that value does not apply to a zygote. It does not apply to a fetus to me. And if you disagree, that's fine. I'm not telling you to agree with me. I am telling you, however, that it's not your right to apply your morality to anyone else. This is not a black and white issue, period. You don't get to determine what's right for someone else in a situation like this. This isn't a murder where you can just say, this is wrong, all the time, always, no matter what. Because we're even debating the fact that this is a person or a human or a life. That's what's under debate here. You cannot say that you have the right answer when there isn't one.
Do you really think these women that march in Washington screaming at the top of their lungs about how it's their right to abort their children if they want to go get a sociology degree, do you really think that the problem there is that they just don't recognize that they're killing innocent human life?
They don't, because they're not. John, why are you shitting on sociology degrees, by the way, you absolute asshole? You work at Subway! Sociology degree, writing papers and getting PhDs. Oh, no. What a waste of time. Oh, I'm sorry, would you like that toasted? Yes, John, I would like that toasted.
No, the problem is that they don't value innocent human life, especially if it interferes with or inconveniences their subjective desires. That's why the old arguments don't really work anymore. I mean, we used to be able to say things like, hey, you know, have you at least considered that if you're wrong, it would mean that you're advocating for the murder of children?
But they're not wrong, John. You haven't demonstrated they're wrong.
Because now, that's not even effective anymore.
Correct, because people recognize that's an awful, stupid argument.
Because it assumes that they'd agree that we're wrong, even if the mainstream narrative didn't support it, and it inconveniences their lifestyle. It gets
Their lifestyle. What is up with people on the right? And this idea of lifestyle. This comes up with, like, gay people or lesbians or trans people, too. Like, oh, I disagree with your lifestyle. I thought you were in favor of liberty. Shouldn't everyone's lifestyle be okay with you? Seems pretty hypocritical, but alright.
It's back to whether we even agree that innocent human life has unique value.
You have to demonstrate it's human life, John. You haven't done so.
And again, that's just a conflict between good and evil.
I'm trying to imagine the warped worldview you have to have where John Doyle is the good guy. Absolutely bonkers.
Why are they looking at the car?
That's in my mom's boyfriend's car.
Antipodian Squid with 600 bits. I support the abortion lifestyle. Who doesn't?
We're driving a stolen car? If you don't help us out, we're gonna be in so
Oh, it's Gustavo Fring.
much trouble.
I don't think that this is what you really want.
It's my life, it's my choice.
Grab on! Hold tight! Grab on me! Trains go fast.
Politics aside, my most accurate take about this film is that it's not going to be funny, and it's going to be for the same
I think it looks a little funny. I don't think it's gonna be like the best movie of the year or anything, but it looks like a cute road trip dramedy. It'll probably have some sincere moments that talk about serious issues and what it's like to go through an unwanted pregnancy and get a termination and how difficult it can be in this country because of people continually eroding away Roe v. Wade. And it looks a little funny, like that the trains go fast joke made me laugh. It's not like it's coming out in theaters. It's a streaming service movie. It's on HBO Max, which I have. I'll probably watch it at some point. It looks all right.
same reason that it's very difficult for women to be funny in general.
John, good guy. Genius.
Because there are approved strains of female comedy. Female comedy is always about rejecting the perceived standards of morality and feminine behavior. It's not created, nor is it viewed to make the intended audience feel good in an amusing way or in a funny way, but rather to energize them through communicating to them that these women are rejecting those oppressive patriarchal standards and they're having fun while doing it. Look, they're on a roller coaster while pregnant? What? These wild and crazy girls aren't supposed to do that.
I don't think that's the joke, John. They happened to be on some rides, but that wasn't the funny part, you idiot. Holy shit, he's such an idiot. That's not the funny part, John. I didn't even think about that when I was watching it, because why would it matter? She's going to get an abortion. It doesn't matter.
That's why, generally speaking, female comedy is always like, I eat lots of food, I'm messy, I have sex with lots of men, I get pregnant and murder the children for sport. It's
the only comedy involving women John has ever seen is apparently Ghostbusters 2016.
There's nothing funny about the two.
Freaking Out 99 with a bit, oh god, he's doing the women aren't funny thing, yeah.
etc. And male comedy is generally, actually funny. And of course there are
Apparently you've never seen a Joe Rogan set, yikes.
exceptions to this, but the problem is that because those exceptions don't fit the approved narrative, they don't find as much mainstream success. But it's also interesting how
I'm gonna just say this. Anyone who says women aren't funny should be forced to sit through every one of Jeff Dunham's comedy specials. I don't even know if you're allowed to do that under the Geneva Conventions, but I think it's only fair.
how the title cards mentioned that her life got off track and now she must forge her own path. And that's actually really deep when you think about it. Like, I wonder if the person who wrote that is pro-life. Maybe they're a fan of the show, because what that's saying is like, okay, you were perhaps behaving recklessly. You weren't ready to be a mother, but you were still actively having...
John, if you actually read the book, I didn't, but hey, someone in the chat did, and they pointed this out. They were being safe. The boyfriend assaulted her by poking holes in the condom. Kind of makes you look like a jackass, huh?
Sex with men who you presumably wouldn't want to father your children. This wasn't supposed to happen, but guess what? It did happen. And now you have a choice to make. You have to forge your destiny. You have to forge your own path. Are you going to take responsibility for your actions, or are you...
Again, acting as though carrying a child you don't want to term and then putting into an adoption system, which is already filled with children who aren't being taken care of, is somehow more responsible than terminating the pregnancy before it becomes a person with thoughts and feelings. Very strange. That's not responsible, John. That's the opposite of responsible. It's one of the reasons crime rates went down like 20 to 30 years after Roe v. Wade, because there are multiple factors that are going into this. Less lead poisoning, and also because there were fewer unwanted pregnancies. And it turns out, people who are unwanted pregnancies are unwanted children, and they wind up in subpar conditions, whether it's with the birth mother or in the foster care system. Then they get spit out with absolutely no future and turn to crime. Genius, John. Freaking Out 99. Taking responsibility for your actions equals dying in childbirth.
Going to run from them? Are you going to allow this child to live his or her life, or are you going to take that from them because you're a coward and because you're selfish? And this girl even says to the guy, who I think is actually the father of the child, well, it's my life and it's my choice. And we first have to ask her to check her privilege, because isn't she fortunate? Isn't she fortunate to have the power in the situation? Do you think she'd feel the same way if she were in the position of the child?
You know how she'd feel if she was in the position of the child, aka the zygote? She wouldn't feel anything, because she doesn't have a developed brain and therefore doesn't have thoughts, feelings, or a personality. Glad we could cover that one for you, John.
There's a great Reagan quote, which...
No. All you have to say is the words "great Reagan quote" all next to each other, and the answer's already no. There's no such thing as a great Reagan quote. He's literally a traitor to the United States. He sold weapons in order to fund the Contras. What a great guy. He made jokes about gay people during the AIDS epidemic because he thought it was God's will to kill homosexuals. He's a monster, John. I understand why you look up to him, because you'd love to have the power to kill as many gay people as you possibly could. But here we are, just a Subway employee. What a shame.
Which is, I've noticed that everyone who is pro-choice has already been born. And that's absolutely true. These are people who have been born. Their parents have made sacrifices.
Yes? Is that your argument? You can only be pro-choice if you're born. Okay, you can only be pro-life if you're born too? You can only have any opinion if you've been born. That's how it works? Is that your gotcha? It's not a gotcha. I bet you if you asked a room full of Gen Z people or millennials, like, how many of you wish you were aborted? About half of the people will raise their hands up. So probably not a great gotcha.
Is to give them life, and they are unwilling to carry the torch.
You know why unborn zygotes don't have opinions? Because they don't have personalities or thoughts. They're literally not people, John.
For their own selfish reasons. So no, it's not actually your life, and it's not actually your choice, because you don't just get to do whatever you want simply by virtue of your being alive, and simply by virtue of your ability to do whatever you want, hypothetically.
Thank you, Baja.
And what an
Embryo.
unfortunate reality this is. What an unfortunate time we live in, where people construct their livelihoods convincing young women that not only is motherhood unimportant, it's actually undesirable.
No one is telling women that motherhood is undesirable. Society says to people now, if you want to be a mother, that's great. If you want to be a father, that's great. If you want to stay at home and take care of your kids, coolio. If you want to go get a job, that's cool too. If you want to have no kids, awesome. Whatever you want to do. That's literally the point. It's the pursuit of happiness, John. Don't you give a shit about what those words mean? People have the right to choose what they want to do with their lives. If you want to be a stay-at-home mother, great. Society isn't telling you not to do that.
And they make money doing it. And we all become more miserable as a result as our country deteriorates in front of us as the greatest civilization in the history of the world slowly...
The greatest civilization in the history of the world. That seems very objective and not at all hyperbolic. Good job, John.
dies as we have failed to carry the torch passed down by our ancestors because we're selfish and because we thought that we could ignore conventional...
John, do you think abortions didn't happen prior to Roe v. Wade? Or prior to America, for that matter? Abortions aren't new, bud. Hate to break it to you.
wisdom. We thought that we could elevate evil and remain good. Okay, for the record, none of what I'm about to say is necessarily to make an argument against abortion. I'm more than capable of arguing against abortion in a completely secular framework as I have...
Haven't seen it yet. It would have been an interesting thing for you to try and do, but hey, you know, it's your video.
I've done many times on this channel before, but I'm doing it. I'm going big time preacher mode now, so click away if you're not ready for this information yet. And if you stick around, you don't get to complain about, well, he's forcing his beliefs on us. Yeah, that's what I do, but you're...
Yeah, I'm not going to complain you're forcing your beliefs on people in this video, but if you're going to try and use religious principles to say that the law should tell people to do a certain thing, you're not allowed to do that. The Constitution literally says you can't do that, John.
Okay with it when it's about gun control, when it's about climate change, but when it's about, I don't know, the truth of our existence, which requires you to be a good person, well, then you don't want to hear it.
No, you can't bring your religious beliefs into any laws, whether they be about abortion or something else. It's a big thing. Antipodian Squid with 100 bits. John Doyle, quote, "I'm more than capable. Are you, though, of anything?" Yeah, the Bible never says abortion is wrong, so he's about to do a lot of stretching.
But that's okay. I'm not really speaking to those people anyways. I'm speaking to those who recognize that we have incessantly dismissed the conflict between good and evil as merely a difference of opinion. And we have allowed our...
Because in this particular case, it is a difference of opinion. If you want to talk about good and evil, John, we can. It's a bit of an esoteric concept, but I don't think you're going to like the side I think you wind up on.
...ourselves to be seduced by those acting on behalf of evil when they tell us that this wonderful and benevolent country of ours was actually founded so that everything could be free to propagate, whether that be good or evil. And if we try to stop it, well, you're just enforcing your morality on me, and that's it.
Ask Compu with a bit. It's always good to stretch before some mental gymnastics.
Anti-American. And, you know, ignoring for now that the Founding Fathers would actually disagree with that if you read their actual writings and not just out-of-context quotes that go viral on Facebook, we have...
I don't necessarily agree with everything every Founding Father said, John. They had great Enlightenment ideas on certain things and certain ways to make the government function, but they were also wrong on a ton of stuff. And I know you're sick of hearing this, John, but you never seem to want to integrate it into your understanding, so I'll repeat it. Most of them were slave owners. So, like, their opinions on freedom and liberty are a little tainted, to say the least. So, well, they had tons of great ideas, and they were smart people. They were also pretty fucked up in a lot of ways, like every human being. They were complicated, so maybe take that into consideration before you act like the Founding Fathers are literally American Jesuses, and that their word should literally dictate everything we do. I'm not gonna let people who have been dead for 180 years dictate what we should do as a society. It's like, what would that even be? Necroc? Like a necros? What, necroscopy? Necroscopy. Like democracy. Or like a theocracy, but with necro. You know, dead people. Dead people ruling. Necrocracy. I find that really hard to say for some reason. Necrocracy. It's the crocracy that's getting me. Necrocracy. We don't live in a We don't live in a necrocracy, John. Dead people don't get to determine exactly how we should rule ourselves. Thank you. I don't know why I have so much trouble with that word.
Given the heart of our country to evil forces, and we are
Necrocracy.
seeing the results of their work every day. And you and I really didn't have a say in it. And that makes us really angry. But you know who it makes even angrier?
We do have a say in things, though, John. You can do constitutional amendments.
Him. It makes him angrier. It's the same conflict as always. I mean, good and evil. It's impossible to talk about that conflict without talking about the big man, right?
I mean, it's entirely possible, John, and in the framework of when we're talking about the legality of something, you have to talk about it in a framework that does not include your God, because not everyone believes in Christianity. You have a First Amendment right to practice and believe your beliefs, and I respect that. I really do, believe it or not. But you don't have the right to enforce that on other people. That's pretty much it. Period. End of sentence.
Because we have taken everything that is good and righteous and pure and beautiful, and we have mocked it.
Everything that is right and pure, we have mocked it. And you want to go back and decide if any of that's hyperbolic, John? Are you happy with how that turned out? Okay.
That elevated everything that is evil and disgusting to the core of our society. Our culture has become an abomination. Abortion, materialism, greed, hedonism, gluttony, lust, convenience, endless entertainment. All of that has destroyed.
And people asking me, how is John a fascist? This one right here, fellas. And it's always fellas. This one right here. People who aren't fascists don't go on hyperbolic diatribes about how wicked and, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Degenerate. They don't go on diatribes about how degenerate society has become. That's what fascists do. This is not how normal people discuss issues.
There's nothing funny about
Distracted us from the most important truth of all, which
Stephen J. Neptune Man with 15 bits. I thought conservatives were supposed to be the rebel badasses who want everything lewd and crude with boobs and butts, unlike those stuffy little snowflakes. Yeah, not him though, I guess.
which is that God will not be mocked. And you can roll your eyes, you can keep your...
God will not be mocked. John, I don't know how to tell you this, but my career started mocking God. And yeah, pretty cringe. I agree with you there. I was even younger than you when I started on YouTube, believe it or not. You're 21, I think I was 18 or something like that. So I have some pretty cringe stuff out there. That's edgy teenage atheist material. But, like, you can mock God. It happens all the time. Like, I get that offends you, and I'm sorry. Weird coming from someone like you who seems to not care about when anyone else gets offended. But the second that your deity comes under fire, you're like, God will not be mocked.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Antipodian Squid with 100 bits. Hannah and Jake come for the God mockery, stay for the God mockery, and more. True. Freaking Out 99 with a bit. We've been mocking God for years and nothing has happened. Well, actually, Harold Penisman happened. True. Got a chuddy video for you? Okay. I'll save it for later. Just because after this one, we're going to do Elliot Hulse, and then I'm probably going to call it a night.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Ask Compu with a bit. Oh, no, that was the same one.
Pride. Keep recycling to yourself the same tired George Carlin monologue or your favorite excerpt from the Richard Dawkins book, which you only read half of. None
I'll have you know I read the whole thing, John. I read the whole thing.
of that will matter because you will bow and you will confess. Just
What? How? Who's saying John's a fascist? You will bow. You will confess. That's the fascism. That's the fascism right there.
like everyone else, and you will be humbled to learn that a life dedicated to the worship of the self does not make you more than the dust at his feet. And so when you're scratching your head trying to piece all this together, you're thinking, well, now why would people do this? What's the goal here? It would seem that the belief that God would refuse to end all that is beautiful through his creation if there were good people who may die. And so those who have been corrupted by satanic forces are working.
John, none of this argument makes any sense, because if God existed and it was the God of the Bible who was both omniscient and omnipotent, then when he created the universe, he would know that we would wind up in this exact situation. If there was a God that is both omnipotent and omniscient, then everything that happens in the universe is of his own design. So every abortion that has ever happened, if God existed, the Christian God, it would be by his will. Every miscarriage, and there's been way more miscarriages than there have been abortions, and those are all God. So, if what you're saying's true, John, why does God like to kill fetuses more than liberals? Is God a liberal, John? If so, I have a lot of apologies to make to the big girl upstairs.
To ensure that there are no good people left anymore, so he ends all creation, because since Satan is not nearly strong enough to corrupt or destroy God, he has to force God to destroy his own.
Hey, John, if God is all-powerful, why does he allow Satan to exist? It seems like kind of a cuck move, right? God getting cucked by Satan every day. God's like, you're all my children, and I love you all equally. And then Satan comes up and he's like, hey, why don't you be gay? Do the big gay. And everyone's like, that does sound pretty good. God's like, damn. Cucked by Satan again.
Own creation by corrupting it entirely, which is us, and all that was once good and beautiful. And if you think this sounds crazy, like I used to until a couple of years ago, you should just look outside. You should read more. There is no other explanation, and I refuse.
You should read more. There's no other explanation for what's happening in reality than what's in this 2,000-year-old book written by people in the desert that says there's an omnipotent sky daddy that's gonna punish us all. All right, little bit ISIS-y of you, but continue.
Refuse to withhold this information because some people might get mad and not stick around for the next time I talk about why socialism equals bad, because this is the root of our conflict and fundamental.
Hey, John, did you miss the part where Jesus said, take all that you have and give it to the poor, and that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven? Sounds pretty socialist-y to me. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's? No? None of that? Or is that just like liberal propaganda, Jesus? He didn't say take a little bit of what you have and give it to the poor. He didn't say, you know, donate to Wikipedia once a year. Give some tithes at church. He said take all you have and give it to the poor. So your microphone, your weird laptop with all your stupid stickers, your little Jesus bobblehead, the rifle behind you, your poster that's an excuse to show a swastika in your videos without getting flagged. You should take all that to a pawn shop and sell it and then give the money to like a homeless shelter. Because honestly, wouldn't that be what Jesus would want? Seems like that's what he wants, because he said take all you have and give it to the poor. And yeah, this life will suck for you, living on the street and, you know, just getting enough to get your next meal. But hey, this is temporary. This mortal shell is nothing but a cocoon, which you will be released from to your heavenly Father. And then you get to spend all of eternity doing whatever you think heaven's like. So, yeah, go do that. Or, you know, stop being a hypocrite. Whichever you want to do.
Essentially the root of all conflict. And only when you understand that can you begin to make sense of what's really going on in our world. Hey guys, if you like this video, leave it a thumbs up.
Remember when Jesus said, turn the other cheek? What he really meant by that was buy an assault rifle, and if you're afraid for your life, shoot someone in the back 7 times. Anyway, that's enough John. John's a absolute hypocritical fascist piece of trash. And here's the link again if you wanted to report the video for the trans comment he made, or anything else that you feel breaks the rules.